Hey everyone, I'm your guest host, Dean Alioto. Today we are being visited, sorry I have to go there, by someone who's no stranger to podcast UFO listeners, UFO researcher Alejandro Rojas. Alejandro has been a voice of reason in the enigmatic field of UFOs, operating somewhere between UFO advocate and that guy who tells kids that there's no Santa Claus because the evidence just is too flawed. Alejandro is also the head of research and content at Enigma Labs, which is he's building a repository for cataloging, scoring, and crowdsourcing UFO incidences, as well as exposing hoaxes. He's also the consulting producer on my upcoming docuseries. And today he's going to give us the exciting highlights from the just completed International UFO Congress convention. Also, this week, don't forget to check out Charles Lear's blog, which will be behind the scenes of UFO cover-ups. But before we begin and pull out Mr. Rojas, there's someone special who I know Dave Altman's going to be very excited about, who'd like to say hi. Back with a stronger heart, your hostess with the mostest, ladies and gentlemen, and all pronouns in between, we bring you Martin Willis 2.0.
Thank you. Yes, I'm all rebuilt, and I'm really feeling good, but I got to tell you, as my friend Phil says, can no longer be a shirtless model.
Aw.
So it was kind of slow anyway. So
a door closes, a window opens.
That's right. No, I do want to say to everyone out there, the outpouring that I've had, the hundreds of emails I've had from people and the messages in all different ways. Thank you so much for your kind words of, I think you really helped me through, everyone, because I don't know. I improved so quickly after the surgery, and we'll say next week I'm going to be on with you and John Burroughs. I'm not cognitive 100%, but I'm really getting there quickly, in every which way. So it's been quite a journey, and I hope no one has to go through what I did. That's listening.
You're talking about the heart surgery, or are you talking about having to listen to me for 3 weeks?
Yeah, that was the worst part. Yeah.
No,
brother, and I also want to say thank you, Dean. I had thought about, I never skip a week, and when I had to get rushed to the hospital and all that, I posted, "I'm sorry, no show this week," without any reason why. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do? It's going to be at least a month before I come back. Should I just have no shows? And then I thought of Alejandro and you both at the same time. But Alejandro, I know, had the UFO Congress coming up. And then you have been such a great friend these last number of years that I reached out to you and you said, sure. And what a guy you are. Thank you so much.
That's the aliens right there saying they agree 100%. I really appreciate the opportunity, and also your listeners are phenomenal, and I know a good chunk of them. So that's just been fantastic to be an extension of you, Martin, in any way I can. And so I'm just really happy to see you looking so great. Look like your cheeks look even rosy.
Well, that was makeup. But
is it? Okay.
Yeah, I was in makeup for a little while before. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm going to be back next week. Dean and I are going to do the show together, and then I'm going to baby step my way back to doing so with John Burroughs next week and James Fox the week after. I'll be on my own then. Hopefully, the training wheels will be off. But anyway, all right. You have a great show tonight with Alejandro.
Thank you, brother. Be well. Right. Talk soon.
Take care. Thank you.
All right, so here we go. Here is Alejandro.
Hey, it's me.
Good. I'm glad it's not someone else. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Always, it's great to see Martin because, if he really had, if it had been worse, there would have been kind of a string of heart attacks. I definitely, when I got that text that he was headed to the hospital, had my own heart palpitations. It was a scary moment. Thank God that he's doing so well.
Yeah. Well, you guys have always been an awesome tag team with this as well. And so I kind of feel like it's a community that came together and rallied behind him. And, 10 years is a long time, and you've been at this a long time as well. So, Yeah, here we are. We are back.
Here we are. Now, you did forget one of my titles because I've got so many, but I got to add this one just because I'm so proud of it and the team, but also a board member and the director of PR for the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. A great organization, also known as the SCU. Now, you did have to fit in a couple witty jokes there, and I really appreciate them. They're very funny. Thank you for that.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was going to talk about that, but first I want to kind of, I guess, just dive right into, you're fresh from finishing this year's International UFO Congress convention. What's unique about this one is that you had been shut down for 2 years.
Yeah.
And just online.
The last one was 2019.
So this is your first in person. So let's start off with that. What was that like?
It was great. It was much smaller because, Karen, who owns the conference, wanted to do a 2022 conference, but, COVID wasn't over. Many will argue we're still not out of the woods, but so it was on hold. It was kind of last minute. So she kind of had to put together things very quickly. And luckily she did, which meant for a little bit of a smaller group. But it was kind of nice because it was more intimate. At the SCU, our meetings are pretty small. But it's, you have much more of an opportunity to mingle with people. And one of the great things that I was skeptical of that Karen did was have a costume party Halloween dance ball. But it turned out to be so much fun. I mean, we danced for hours with James, with Randy Nickerson. Who else? Travis Walton was on the dance floor. Katie Page was out there the whole time. So I can't remember, but there were a full dance floor of partying. It was just so much fun. So you have to ask James about that when you have him on the show. But it was a good time.
He did,
but let alone the speakers. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, that he did come dressed as one of the men in black, but he forgot his black tie. So he's kind of a casual.
That's right. He had the shades on. It was funny because he had the nice suit and the shades, and everybody thought he was like a rock star or maybe like a Hollywood guy or James Bond. Nobody was quite sure, or all the above. No one was quite sure what he was going with. I think the last thing people thought was Men in Black, because he's always got that huge smile and he looks too friendly to be a man in black. So, but he was looking good, that's for sure.
So what were some of the, well, just walk me through what it was like to walk into the cause you're in Arizona, which location you're at now? Was it the same one that I went to in 2019?
No. It was a different venue. It was a different hotel with a lake. So it was really, in a park. So it was really nice. The hotel is short staffed, so they didn't have food. And luckily there were some local food trucks who we kind of said, hey, we've got a lot of people at this conference. If you want to, make sure you're over there during lunch and dinner. And they did. So it was kind of a food truck conference as well, which is actually a lot of fun because everybody loves food trucks. So
nice.
And they had great food. So that made it kind of different and fun. And it added to kind of that intimacy. And, what's great about a smaller venue is you spend a lot more time with the speakers. You're amongst them. You don't have to scramble to get to talk to them. So you really get to have a lot more conversation and interaction with the speakers. And so that's a lot of fun. But otherwise, the speakers we had were excellent. There were a lot of great talks. Micah Hanks, Dr. Michael Masters, Katie Page, like I talked about earlier, John Ramirez, who I didn't know. Most of these people I've known for years. John Ramirez, who, is kind of new to the scene, former CIA official. He broke down kind of all the different government agencies that are involved and kind of helped people understand the legislation that's coming up and what agencies will be involved and how. So that was very educational and interesting. We were very lucky to have him. And the combination with him and Brian Bender, a senior national correspondent for Politico, someone who's also very plugged in to DC, military and the lawmaker side, or as John Ramirez put it, the executive and the congressional branches. It was very helpful to really get a lot of insight. I think that you can't get anywhere else other than maybe podcasts like this, into what's going on right now. And there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of, it's very complicated. And I think people like to boil it down to this is drip disclosure. And I think that this word that gets thrown out there, but, you know, and it's an idea that, you know, like there's some kind of secret cabal in an office that's planning all of this. And really, if you look at the details and actually do the research and break it down, that's not what's going on at all. And the reason that I really like to focus on what's really going on is because there's a lot of people that are involved with what's gone on. And it kind of undermines the importance of the work that people like Chris Mellon or Luis Elizondo, of course, being the guy who ran the Pentagon program, and Chris Mellon being someone who's worked in government and intelligence, even for, you know, the House committee, and has worked on Black project, or at least oversight of Black projects. You know, it undermines the important work that they did to really get us to this point of openness.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because as opposed to even when I went there the first time, which was 2018, there's this feeling of kind of legitimacy that was just starting, because literally the festival was around February when I went to convention, and that was, you know, just a short 3 months after 2017, but it hadn't really reverberated. It had kind of built and became the juggernaut that it was later on. But in 2019, a year later, I felt like, wow, this is now kind of, you know, I felt like people were throwing their shoulders back a little bit more, like we're feeling a little more proud, you know, that we've been at this for a while. And yes, this is now legit. What we've been telling you all along may actually be kind of true. And so when you're in that situation, you have people that are coming out like John Ramirez. That's someone that I really want to talk to. And I want to hear how his was there. But did you get a sense of that? Do you feel like you can see how it's charted, how the people have changed, or the guest speakers, or the new people coming in since 2017? And
yeah, I mean, John Ramirez and Brian Bender are two examples of people that have gotten involved since 2017. And to your point, it brings an air of credibility and the not just credibility, but I mean, both of these individuals have full on tackled this topic and tried to understand kind of how it's operating, how, you know, it's disseminating through the government, and how they are reacting. Because I think that's very interesting, and they're both feeling unencumbered, you know, by stigma to do that, which is really important, I think. No doubt, you know, Brian was able to talk about at first how kind of strange it was, and how he was kind of pushing the envelope at Politico by continuing to cover this topic. But it was in his wheelhouse. It was legit because, you know, he was covering what Congress people were saying, you know, and their briefings, and that they were getting these briefings and their reactions to the briefings. And then John, you know, coming in kind of as a retiree, kind of feeling more done and explaining everything that's going on. So, or at least from his perspective, you know, we didn't have before. So it's really interesting. And, you know, what's important about this is that we do have government agencies getting involved, really, including NASA. And right now, kind of in a analysis mode. They're trying to understand the landscape, you know, how they'll get involved and what they'll do and how they'll analyze things. And there's so many difficult aspects to it. And, you know, to speak to that, and one of the things John talked about is this kind of evolution of groups. So, you know, we had from OSAP to, and I'm going to just go through these this alphabet soup without explaining them, if that's okay, at first,
Sure.
just because to show how there's many of them, from OSAP to ATIP to the UAP Task Force or UAPTF, and then to kind of what has been referred to as AIMSOG, which had its own couple of acronyms, a new one that was introduced in the congressional hearings a few months ago. And then, of course, now we're at this new acronym, ARROW, and we're seeing in the legislation other names and titles, and perhaps even other acronyms will pop out. So really it demonstrates, I think, how there's so much activity going on. Like, how do we handle this? What do we do? Where do we put this group? Where does it fit? And I think what people don't realize is, that this is a sensitive topic for the military, in that there's got to be some amount of secrecy. For example, let's say you're a guy, an unidentified is spotted. Let's say the Nimitz case. An unidentified is spotted. You don't know what it is. You don't know how it's being propelled. You don't know whose it is, if it demonstrates a technology that has some sort of intelligence behind it. Your first assumption needs to be it's an adversary, a human adversary. So you need to do the research and the work to figure out if that's the case. And if it is the case, how do we get one? How do we back engineer it from what we've seen? And then once you get to the point, and this is the hard part, where and how do you get to the point to say that that's not human? And you're going to want to be 1,000% sure that that is not Chinese or Russian before you say it's not Chinese or Russian, because there's this whole counterintelligence world. And that's why this is fitting into the intelligence arena right now. Because, if let's say we did find out it's Chinese, we don't want to tell the Chinese that we've spotted one of their devices and we're figuring out what it is.
Alejandro, I'm sorry, I'm going to pause you. We've been having a little bit of mic issues and you're getting pixelated. And so as soon as I say that, you start to look a little bit better. But we might have to have you call back in, because it's not just your mic, it's the image and everything. Okay. Go ahead and try it now.
Hello?
There you go. Okay, we're working now. Otherwise,
good?
We may need to get you closer to the router. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. You were talking about...
I've got full bars here.
Okay.
Full bars, baby.
Yeah.
But
right
yeah. So where was I? So yeah, even if we do know it's Chinese or Russian, we don't want them to say that. So so there's a lot of nuance, a lot of difficulty there. That's why I think, it becomes difficult for the military to share a lot of detail and figure out what to share. But the benefit of what's going on, and where I think we really need to pay attention, is the science. That's what's so exciting about SCU and NASA getting involved, is that science by its nature is transparent. Whatever the conspiracy theorists may feel, science doesn't work without transparency. When you write a paper, and I think this goes, back to the Ukraine or even some of the OSAP material, when you are making an argument, a scientific argument that, this metal is unusual, or that we're spotting UFOs, you write a paper that makes the strongest scientific argument, then you release that paper and it gets scrutinized by your peers. That's how it works. So when Avi Loeb is scrutinizing the Ukrainian paper, that's his job. That's what he's supposed to do. That's how science works. That's his duty as a scientist. And what we're watching there is science doing its work. And maybe this is a good precursor, because in the future, there's going to be continue to be UAP papers written. And of course, you're going to have a lot of enthusiasts saying, hey, that's definitely a UFO. But why are these scientists saying it's not? Well, you got to read the paper and look at the details and see what they're arguing. And, that's how science works. And that's where we're really going to, I think, make exciting discoveries, because as that process goes on, there will be those cases that will be more difficult to explain. And that's when we'll have a consensus that, hey, guys, this really is a weird case. We really don't know what this one is. And then you're going to be, that establishes a scientific, well, they call it like a theory or a theorem, but that establishes that we've got a genuine mystery on our hands.
Yeah, some of the things that I keep coming back to again and again is, like as an example, Randy Nickerson's on a podcast, and there's this guy who's a scientist on it, and he talks about, Dave Fravor and these other pilots that have seen these craft, and he says, the scientist said, these guys, meaning Fravor and pilots, they're not scientists, so they don't really know what they're saying. And my question, if I'd been there, would have been, are you a pilot, Mr. Scientist? Oh, you're not a pilot. So you've never been up there, and you don't know the difference between 250 yards and, 2.5 miles. So it's kind of like some people are trying to take ownership of this, like as Neil deGrasse Tyson, he seems to project, when these things are real, I'll let you know. Until then, just assume that, these are just unique little sightings, people. There's so much stuff we don't know about the universe, blah, 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 and everything else gets thrown in. And so I feel like when we're talking about a government like the USA, power government, that says it isn't us and it isn't our adversaries and it's not our allies, that's a clear statement. That is like a conscious decision to do it. That's not something that as you know, is thrown out lightly. Mm-hmm. And so the conspiracy theorists may, pull up a bowl of this and chow down and say, well, now that they've figured out how to create technology that flies around like this, it's the perfect, moment to say, what you're going to be seeing from now on, we are all identifying it as UFO. It has nothing to do with us. So if it's something that's weaponized, if one of these UFOs start to drop something and we see something, where they're doing destruction, for me, that's when I go, okay, now we might have a thread there in the conspiracy theory. But until then, it seems like they're asking for help. And more importantly, when I look at these people that are testifying and everything, I'm going, okay, that was last June. And maybe you can answer this. Last June, we had the hearing, the U.S. Congress hearing. So since the ridicule factor, which was mentioned 4 times, has been removed, where are we now? Are we seeing any more footage coming from our servicemen and servicewomen that we didn't see before because of the ridicule factor? And how is that going up? Because I would still think that would be filtered through the government, through the, their superiors.
Mm-hmm. So as far as video, and that's kind of what I mean too, with the secrecy factor. So John Greenwald, has done some Freedom of Information Act work lately, where he got the Navy to admit we do have 22 other UAP videos. However, we're not releasing them. You're never going to see them, was kind of the message that he got. Will we never see them? Who knows? It would take, Congress can certainly say, show that to the public. But, what happens like in the last hearings under the classified or the secret, closed door section of the hearings, is the military saying, look, we've got these videos. Here's why we can't show these to the public. And, and then it's up to the Congress people to decide whether they're going to take that expert opinions of the people giving them information, or, work towards sharing information with the public. Now, what's interesting is even Chris Mellon, who I mentioned earlier, had earlier said, Congress, you really need to tackle this, albeit it's classified information and it'll probably have to be behind closed doors. And then, people like Gillibrand came forward and said, no, we will have them look at it, but we want a public facing portion of this as well. And so they asked for the report. Another report supposed to come in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what happens. So they've kind of had to say, no, we want to share stuff publicly. So we may see or may not see those videos, but it will kind of be a struggle there on that end, I guess, to answer the question there. Yeah, I think that answers your question, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always wondering, what is that footage that they can't show us? Does it include a radar system in the foreground, in the shot because it's video? What is it? Because even today, we still do not have the underneath the craft, rivets and all, photo or video. So for me, I look at that and I go, well, the only people that would probably have that who are flying around the airspace a hell of a lot and do have high-end technology to monitor this is our government. But beyond that, I really kind of not to say, well, it's just this, but I do wonder how much of this, my feeling is that the agenda has always been probably controlled and always will be by those who are visiting, doing the drive-bys. And so it seems like they're controlling the footage. I mean, we don't hear of schoolyards that are having these mass sightings anymore. And maybe that's because kids have cell phones. Why is that?
I think you make a really good point. You know, a lot of the skeptics will say, you know, why is the footage so terrible? Why don't we have that data? And I would argue that, you know, we don't know about the nature of the phenomena or those controlling it. If there's intelligence behind it, especially one that is much further beyond us, I would imagine they would also understand the importance of making sure we don't get enough data. That if they don't want to share, you know, enough data where we can make a conclusion that about them, then they can operate in a manner in which we don't gather that data. And I'm starting to use that term, and I want to get back to your earlier question about data, because that's what it really is all about, gathering that data. And to your point earlier, you said a scientist who said, you know, a pilot's just a pilot. That's going a little far, but he kind of has a little bit of a argument there in that, you know, what everybody's doing is gathering data. Scientific analysis of that data is different depending on who's looking at it. Scientists will look at the data differently than intelligence will look at it, which will look at it differently than journalists will look at it. When you're a scientist, you need scientific data. You need something physical to work with. That's why, you know, people, even though some ufologists get mad, that's why Avi Loeb is like, I'm throwing out everything you guys have done because it's not good enough and I've got to do my own. When there's a scientific perspective, he's exactly right. You know, to your point you made earlier, the government's the only one that has these systems that can really gather all this information that would be necessary for scientists, but that's classified. So scientists don't have access to it. So groups like Avi Loeb or UAPX are looking at how do we use tools that can gather more information. So if you saw that movie Terror in the Sky, where those UPX guys have a roof full of different equipment, and that's what you need. So if something flies over, a video is not enough. You need IR, you need to scan it with radio, you need to see if it's emitting any radiation. You need to really try to gather as much scientific data about that sighting as possible to make any conclusions or figure something out. So that's what Avi Loeb's doing too. They're using systems that have never been used for this before. Now it's different when you get to intelligence. When the military is looking at this from a military perspective, they're looking at two things. They're looking at how do we exploit these technologies that we're seeing, and also how do we what is the nature of them? How do we defend ourselves? So in that arena, the pilot testimony is going to be extremely important, you know, because this is an expert. This is someone who's trained to observe, and that's data that they will be able to use more. In the scientific arena, the pilot can give them pointers, say, here's what I saw. And we'll be able to run some numbers, like say, okay, if it did what he said it did, this is the sort of energy it would need. This is sort of, but you know, he's not a machine that can input and output that data. So there is a limited use that scientists can use for it. But then when it comes to journalism, when you're writing for the general public, you know, then it's even more compelling. Because this expert, this pilot, you know, and I think that's where most of us are, is chasing a large tic-tac shaped object that can outclass his, you know, all of our jet fighters. And really, you know, we'd be screwed if this thing attacked. You know, first of all, military has to assume that could be a threat. People get mad, oh, the threat narrative. It's such a, it's a lack of understanding of how the military looks at and has to look at this. The military isn't here to look for friends. The military is here to defend us against foes, you know. So that's why the military is using that threat kind of perspective. That's their job to do that. So, it's going to be different across all of those different arenas.
Yeah, we have a question. Dr. Richard asks, how did the government become the be-all and end-all of UFO investigation? And I mean, first blush, that I don't think they are, but I think when the government steps in, it somehow gets official, because now they're recognizing it, even though we've recognized it for essentially 70 years
Yeah.
plus. What's your take on that?
I would say a couple things. First of all, they have more capability. One of the things that we've had a problem with in this field is a lack of resources. There's very little money, and there's very little expertise. And those experts that we do have limited resource and time. They can't do this during their day job. They're doing it on off times. So like groups like the SCU, it'll take us a couple years to write a paper because people are doing this on the weekend or when they can get time here or there, a couple hours a week to work on a paper, as opposed to being able to do it all day long. The government has resources. So if they look into this, just like the government is, what looks into a lot of experimental drugs, cancer drugs, things like this, because it's something that the corporate world can't do or won't do because there's no profits associated with it. And that's the capitalist world. A corporation isn't going to get involved unless they can make some money from that arena. So that's why you get the government involved with this kind of research. Who else is going to do it? I wouldn't say they're the end all be all, but they're definitely there's just a lot of people. I would say it's the individuals who decide whether or not the government is the end all be all. And most individuals currently, I think, do look for the government for answers on this. It doesn't have to be that way. And maybe it won't in the future. Maybe organizations like SCU will get more gravitas. So for example, if SETI heard a signal, and SETI scientists said, this is a genuine extraterrestrial signal from a civilization outside of our own, who are people going to listen to? SETI or the government? If the government says, I don't think so. I think SETI is who people are going to listen to. These are the scientists who have been skeptical the entire time. I think that's an example. And if we do have an independent organization to come out and say, we've confirmed, this is a technology that is beyond our own. Check out these videos and their scientific analysis of that video, like SCU. Hopefully we'll have the gravitas, or some organization could have the gravitas outside the organization or government to say, this is real, and people will listen.
Yeah, it's something that is kind of like, I looked at it as, oh, that's nice that the government endorses the existence. We already kind of have a pretty clear understanding of how the government's involvement has been in the past. Nothing really changed from that statement, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing that they released was, I think, 6 frames, something like that, something going by a cockpit really fast. And then the congressmen ended up going behind closed doors, and they might have seen something, that is, much more miraculous than that. So I'm kind of looking at it, and again, you look at the math. Is this, do we have, more sticks in this pile than we did before? I don't know. I think when I think of any advances that are going to be done, it'll be done by civilians, or it'll be done by think tanks like SCU. We have all these great people. But as an example, Randall Nickerson cannot, if he wants to put if someone wants to put cameras on their plane and be able to go out themselves, high-tech cameras that you can buy that have infrared, everything else, you can't do that. If you're going to do that, you have to relicense your plane as a different type of vehicle, and you have to get certain permits and all this stuff. It's a big pain in the ass because they don't want this to fall off your plane and and drop down and hurt someone.
Right.
But there's certain things where that would be a great, you could certainly put it on a boat if you're looking for something under the water, underwater submersibles, or at night, which is what SCU is doing. But it's kind of hard for the average, person, UFO researcher, UFO enthusiast, who wants to do that, who wants to be out there. And so as the technology gets better and better, I feel like that's gonna come out. This is not owned by the government anymore.
Mhm.
Holloman and all those other stories, about Kraft's landing and stuff. I think if that were to happen, today, I think that, I think it's susceptible to being captured, but at the same time, it's not. And everyone's got cell phones and stuff. And granted, everyone's looking down like this, right?
Mhm.
Not looking up. But in your estimation, do you feel like, what SCU and some of the other organizations, do you feel like they're going to be making a dent here? Or do you feel like the government's going to give us a little bit more and show us some more footage? And for
I
what
think
purpose?
that, yeah, I think a couple things. First, I do want to address Dr. Richard. I saw his follow-up. We don't have resources, but haven't we, without government, amassed proof of visitation over 70 years? No, I don't think so at all. I think that we've got anecdotal information. I don't think we have proof of that. If we had proof, the conversation would be much different. I think there's a couple things. I think that given that the government does have to kind of worry about the classification of information, one of the things that they can do is fund science. For instance, work together with SCU, and at NASA's a good start, or maybe fund or help give funding to other organizations who are more openly and more transparent, kind of looking into this topic. I think that would be a huge help. That then we don't have to worry about that classified kind of side of things. So that's another thing government can do to help, which is important. So there are things that the government can do to help that we need to ask them to do, which a lot of our Congress people are doing, and we need to encourage them to do so. A lot of people, in fact, John Ramirez made the point that it's not the individual congressman that you want to talk to, it's the actual committees. So sending messages to the committees, especially the committees, the armed services committees, to let them know, we've got to, we need to continue this sort of research to figure this out. I think does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So I do want to get back to some of the highlights. One of the things that was really exciting is that Randall Nickerson won the UFO Researcher of the Year. That's fantastic. And so if you can kind of talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like I keep saying, those of us who have known Randall Nickerson and what he's been up to have been waiting this movie for over a decade. And, no clue what we're going to get, knowing that he's done a lot of work. Now that we've got the movie, if people haven't seen Aerial Phenomena, I, for one, I think I talked to you maybe the day after I saw it. I gave you a call to say, wow, I was so impressed by that movie. Not just the content of the UFO research or the research done on the case, but also as a filmmaker. The heart and soul that's in there. It's emotional, and you're following, Emily Trim's journey as she goes back to, for the first time, back to at the Ariel school, now living in Canada, and re-experiences everything and talks to old friends and teachers. It's just an amazing movie. So it's a great amount of UFO research coupled with a unique and creative and emotional and very deep presentation of that material. So that's why I felt, it was Karen's idea. Karen is the one who came up with who should win. And I was like, heck yeah, I agreed with her. So, and I yeah, absolutely deserving. So beautiful movie. And to have him there, it was funny because we gave him a call. We were at, the award dinner was starting and he wasn't in the room. So Karen gave him a call and said, "You're coming to dinner, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah, when is it?" And she said, "Now." And he said, oh my gosh, let me get down there. So he came down and he made it luckily a few minutes before we gave him the award. And it was one of the shortest acceptance speech because he was just kind of, speechless. He didn't know what to say, which was great. So, we're happy to honor him. We ended the show. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but it worked out where we actually interviewed, Karen interviewed via Zoom, Emily Trim and Lysel. Hopefully I'm saying her name right, but she's the girl, Liesel. Exactly. She's the one who you see in the video so much. That little girl who's talking about the creatures and her drawings and the sense that she was getting with them. Really, really cute. So it was wonderful to have them there and have their input. And the last, at the end of the interview, they were saying, about how grateful they were for Randy and the film, and how great it was to work with him. So yeah, so we were really happy to do that.
Yeah. Also, I should mention that I got a chance to see. I had seen the first cut of James Fox's Moment of Contact, and was just going, well, here comes the second shot over the bow by Fox. And what was unique about this one is that it's a follow doc, where it's one story and you're following it all the way through. Even though, James had worked on this story years ago, couldn't fit it into the phenomenon. And then it became its own thing. And he did one of his premieres at the International UFO Congress convention. I'm curious what the reaction was there. And then I'll tell you what the reaction was last night for the Los Angeles premiere that we had here. Yeah.
It was great. I think that, oh, look, there's some pictures. Oh, wow, look at that. I wonder where that picture came from. That's great. Anyway, yeah, I think with the movie, I really like this follow kind of. You and I have talked about this before and kind of debated the best way to do it or not. And for this movie in particular, I really like following James. He's a very charismatic, person. He's fun. To know James is to love James. So, of course, I think an audience is going to really enjoy following him and his reactions, because his reactions are great. He's so friendly and he laughs, and his reactions are so genuine, and you really get it. And even at the times where he's frustrated because he's like, wait, we need to talk to this guy, and they're like, no, it's not going to happen. And hopefully I'm not revealing too much when there's even a guy, we got to get out of here, they're going to shoot us, type of situation. Some people just didn't want to talk. And he's like, oh man, but we got to get in there, because he's flown out there and done so much. But he talked to a lot of people, and it's a case where it's based off of anecdotal information. So it's a case where you're just like, I don't know, this alleged alien, but there's nothing like talking to the witnesses firsthand, and they're very, very compelling. They have emotion around what they saw. Every witness, all the main witnesses that we know of are there, or their family to share, or their family to share kind of their experiences. So it's very compelling. I mean, it's one of these, they get under my skin. In fact, I do a lecture on strange alien cases where they're good cases. We've got a documentary, I think that's one of the best on, if we can call it that. It's mostly interviews with the three witnesses of the Allagash case. Another one where they had claim these weird experiences, but it's just so dang compelling. So I liked it. I thought it was great. I think it's the type of movie that's really going to do well with audiences.
Yeah. It was great seeing on the big screen as well. They actually moved the screening because in the theater complex, there's 14 theaters in there, and they moved it to the main theater because there were so many people that showed up, and they realized we underestimated. And so the funny part was that all of us had our seats, and we go to sit down. We're like, wait a second, you're now sitting on the other side of the aisle. I'm here. And then it was just, all right, everyone just find your seat. And it all worked out. But it's interesting because you look at something like this, and again, the term smoking gun gets thrown around. I've thrown it around plenty myself. Yeah. The smoking gun ideally is evidence that you can hold up and say, this is not from here. Here's why, A, B, and C. What for me, what knocked me on my butt here, looking at something like Moment of Contact, is that you have these people that if witness testimony can be considered evidence, then we have evidence of the highest caliber. in that film and in Randall's film and other films. And so it's kind of like, it feels like we've gone as far as we can. And when you see the movie and you see how close we get to getting to the people that have that truth and stuff. And ultimately it's still, can we get our hands on the video? And so, and they mentioned that the producers,
I
talk
think
about that.
You make a really good point there. And I think that that's why people feel that this field, people who've been in this field, and the longer they stay in this field, feel that it's been stagnant. Because when it comes to anecdotal information or witness testimony, we've been at that threshold of excellent testimony since the beginning. I mean, Blue Book is chock full of military and lawmakers who chase UFOs. I mean, and these are people who know. We even have Lockheed Skunk Works guys, engineers, the top engineers in the 60s seeing UFOs and saying, we know better than the Air Force, which they do in many ways. They're the guys who taught the Air Force guys, some of these professors and things. We've had excellent witness testimony for decades now, but we haven't had the science. Really, after 1969, I would say, if you read books like especially Invisible College or others, there was kind of this, we're not going to get there with the science. We just don't have the resources. Scientific community doesn't want to do it. And we had this lull for decades where people weren't really pursuing the science so much. Now it's a new world. Now it's a new world for many reasons. One of those being that citizen scientists are much more empowered with technology. The technologies that may have taken an entire aircraft, in the past now are in our phone. So we have a lot more resources to do the citizen science. So I think this is an arena where we can gather stronger and better evidence and will. And I think, what's exciting about this time, and this is why I have no reservations when I'm talking to scientists or government officials or others saying that, we can get more. I have absolutely certainty that we can gather more. These are genuine mysteries that need to be discovered. Even if some of these things that we discover are mundane, like the weather anomaly they got in Terror in the Sky, it's an area of science that has not been examined, where there will be discoveries made. And the potential, especially when you have even the military saying some of these technologies don't seem to be human made, the potential for where we could go, of course, is extremely exciting.
Yeah, it seems like if I were to break it down into 3 stages, like J. Allen Hynek's, Close Encounters, first, second, third kind. The first one I would say is testimony. Second one would be footage. That would be really compelling. But as we know, and I know as a filmmaker, having done 2 alien films, those things can be faked. So then the third one, which is, to me, is that smoking gun, where it's tangible evidence, where the scientists can have a field day. They can sit down, it's Thanksgiving, and they can just chow on it and look at it from all different angles and quantify it, everything. And so it kind of feels like we're ping-ponging back and forth between the witness evidence, if you will, and the video evidence with the Tic Tac footage and stuff. Still haven't gotten there officially. I know some people have said, well, this is some metamaterial and stuff like that. But it feels like
it hasn't been peer reviewed yet. I mean,
has not been.
It's in the early stage.
Yeah. So I guess my question to you is, do you feel that maybe mankind, which sounds so stupid, womankind, humankind, let's say humankind.
Humankind is the word I like to use.
Yeah. Is will they be able to take that in? Where they, what do they need across the board? Because there's a huge amount of people. You look at the polls and stuff where they say they believe in this and everything, but where were you? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because and it gets back to the question of some of the comments, the questions we were being asked earlier. We do have proof. We do have evidence. It depends on what your threshold is. We don't have scientific proof or evidence. Or shouldn't say that. We do have, I would say, some evidence, but not that compiles enough to be proof yet. but hopefully we're gathering that. We're working on gathering that, and we'll get there. But for individuals, that varies. And we've seen over the years, of course, with these polls with the American public, that they're seeing more and more evidence, and they're seeing enough to convince them. And, that's what the politicians are betting on, that hey, more than 50% of the public seems to be convinced this is a thing. So we as politicians, which is their job, ought to be pushing this and getting this, move this forward, which is what's happening. So the public is getting enough. But that's where it gets into like those arenas that I had talked about. When and where was that for defense? I think that's a big question right now, because now we know, and that was one of the things Elizondo and Mellon were trying to do, is push the military into admitting that they take UAP seriously, and they have been investigating them. Some things we've known as researchers for a long time. But what we don't know is what they've done and what they've gathered, and what was it that convinced them and pushed them over to the tipping point. Those are some interesting questions. So yeah, there's a variety of different thresholds that all mean different things.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comments here as
Yeah,
we're going, and a lot. Yeah, and a lot of people are saying we do have that evidence. We do. Well, the evidence I'm talking about is evidence of either craft, where we can see it, whether it's broken up, whatever, or bodies. And I'm not saying, well, we do have that evidence that the government has that. What I'm not talking about that, whether that's real or not. I'm talking about being able to go to the Smithsonian and see on display, see these beings, or see this material, or see it being studied. When that happens, then end of discussion, because there are the debunkers and the skeptics.
Exactly. And that's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm pushing. What I think is the cutting edge of ufology, because we can talk about evidence. Oh, we've got proof. We can have got evidence. Everybody in the chat could say that if they wanted. That doesn't move the needle. That doesn't get us to the Smithsonian. So what we're focused on at SCU and at Enigma Labs is getting into the Smithsonian, getting that level, and working with scientists that work with this Smithsonian to get involved, which some are willing to do. So, that's what I'm focused on right now. And what everybody should be excited to hear is that we're making ground there, big strides there. So, we're at an incredible time right now where people, I think, will begin to see this sort of science and see, and this is the route to the Smithsonian. And I'm confident that we'll be getting there. We're on the path. So, hopefully people that can convince people to support us. Science is slow, but that's where we're moving. But it's a juggernaut, because once it crosses that threshold, there's no going back.
Yeah. I feel like we kind of have to be in the moment with all of this, which is what, we're doing right now. And the listeners are doing, is they're, disseminating the stuff. Hopefully, whoever they're listening to is someone who is, viable in a way.
Like
Whoever
they're telling you they got a wrap.
They got a wrap as we get close to KGRA. And so I guess before we wrap here, my question for you is, I always say, what's down the hole? What's down the hallway? Mankind. When will we be ready? When
will we be ready? I think we're pretty ready, personally. And of course, that question does depend on what the information that's revealed is. But I think we are close to ready. And, I think there's different studies that show that. One of the studies I do this talk called Religion and UFOs. And one of the studies I love is this one that Ted Peters did, where he did an inventory on whether the discovery of extraterrestrial life will affect your religious views, or your priest religious views, or your religious institution. And pretty much they said, it's not going to affect me, may affect, Father Johnson. It probably will affect the Vatican, or, whatever your religion may be, but it's not going to affect me. and they all had this story that it'll probably affect, if I'm a Catholic, it'll probably affect the Jews and the Buddhists, but the Catholics are going to be fine. And the Buddhists are like, oh man, the Jews and the Catholics are going to freak out, but we Buddhists will be fine. So everybody had the idea that, everybody else is going to have a problem, but I'm not. So what does that mean? Most people feel they're not going to have a problem when this sort of revelation comes true. So there's a guy I know, Franklin Carter, who used to say, even if something like that happens, you're still going to have to go to work the next day. You're still going to have to pay your bills. We're still going to need to focus on their everyday lives. But certainly things will be different. So I think that was really interesting. So I think that now we just need to get there. Now we need to discover what's going on. And for those of you who do believe we are being visited, this is a sort of work that's going to be needed to get us all there, and to continue to move us all in that direction.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating because you look at just the past 4 or 5 years of what we've gone through, in America alone, a lot of change, a lot of upheaval. We're still kind of getting our bearings. And so when I think of like the perfect utopian communication, the Stanley Kubrick communication that we would have with these beings on a global, scale, I wonder, are we mature enough? Are we ready for that? And to answer that question, I always kind of refer to, what are we going to be doing, when we become advanced and we've transcended everything, all of our, pettiness and everything, can we then, communicate? But when I think of them coming here, the only thing that I worry about with regards to religion is if they come here and they say, oh, there is no God, or because that's going to get asked. Are they going to say, well, will religious
people believe that? They may say, I don't believe you.
Yeah. And then, but experiencers will say, no, they're spiritual beings just like all of us. But unless they're coming here to say, we're going to put you in a whole different program, we have a whole different theory on life, which I don't think that would be their agenda if they, even have an agenda. They may not even have an agenda. We always think they're going to come and either they're going to take everything or they're going to give us technology, which we're going to weaponize. So,
a lot of scientists use that analogy that we don't bother, we would be like ants to them. So that's why they wouldn't care about us. But we research ants. Let's take that analogy further. We do care about ants. We do research some people even like to keep them as pets. Yeah, there is such a thing as entomology where people take courses and they do research them. We don't give them money, necessarily. We don't support or try to enhance their environments. We do try to protect. I guess if it came to it, we may try to protect them. But in that example, there is some sort of interaction, just not that deep of an interaction. And what's great about scientists getting involved, I love this paper or this talk that Kevin Knuth, scientist out of Albany, SUNY did. I'm a big fan of Kevin Knuth. He's an astrophysicist and has really tackled this field. He's part of SCU and UAPs. I love the guy. And he does this great talk about time. Like right now, with the technology that we have, we can build devices that travel at a fraction of the speed of light. Some of them are kind of bigger fractions. And the closer we get to the speed of light, the bigger the time difference is. So if there's a group that leaves at, 3/4 the speed of light, we're never going to see them again because the time's going to be so different. When they get back, we're going to be gone. But he talks about how if you have an armada that flies together, or even if some leave but they do calculations to meet at a certain point and travel at a certain speed, then they won't have those time differences. But if there is a group like this, maybe one would branch off and go visit the Earth, and then go visit somewhere else and come back. To them a day. They might come back to visit the Earth a day later to them, but to us, 1,000 years have passed. And if that's the case, why would they interact with us if, when they leave and come back, it's going to be a whole new ballgame or a different species, or at least certainly a different civilization?
Well, certainly Michael Masters, his whole
Yeah.
master's thesis is in that they are some from the future. But again, I always kind of come back to the idea when I hear, to quote Jacques Vallée, he's going to be very disappointed if aliens turn out to be nothing but beings from another planet. I think it's probably all the above, but when I think of travel and having to go at the speed of light, that seems like it's a combustible engine when we should be talking about something that is much more high tech in the sense that the way that people see these craft and the way at aerial school, the way they saw the beams, they seem to be relocating in space. So they're here and then they're here and then they're here. But when you stitch it together, it's like this movement that's happening. And so it feels like they're able, when I remember meeting with Alejandro, or excuse me, not you.
Hey, that's me.
The other, Lou Elizondo.
People get us mixed up all the time.
All the time, identical.
Sometimes I've had people call me Elizondo.
Have they?
So they mix up hybrid. Our names half and half, yeah.
Well, I remember we were talking about that, and he was saying how, he was mentioning, as we all know, how time gets folded and everything, and how you can do that. And I've always had a theory, and Lou was agreeing with it as well, that it doesn't matter what these crafts are made of. That's just a way to hold what is being propelled. It's a way to hold it. And so it just feels like until we can get outside of our physics, that's why whenever I think of a really effective think tank has to have sci-fi writers, because these are the ones that don't adhere to, well, these are the rules, we must use these tools. It's like, no. We can do this, we can do that.
That's what's great about sci-fi. Sci-fi is such a great reference for this field because people have done that out of the box thinking. So you have so many very creative scenarios out there, some of which may be right.
Oh, look at H.G. Wells. He predicted that we were going to have rockets that had stages. I said, genius. All right. So we have someone here, Bo, who, thank you, Bo, for the patronage here. And by the way, please send, if you will, folks, contribute if you like this show. So he says, saw Alejandro on Greenwald. How do you two reconcile differences over Elizondo? I will let you take that.
For the most part, we don't. We disagree about quite a few things there, but Greenwald and I, just like all of my colleagues, even you and I, not to the same degree, I guess, but we all disagree. And actually, our perspectives, yours, mine, and Martin's, are pretty close, I think. But, we all disagree on things, sometimes largely. I mean, I'm not really into Ancient Aliens, even though I was actually interviewing for the show once again for the third time in 2 months. I think last time I visited you and Allie when I was on there. But I don't agree with a lot of the stuff on the show, and I tell the producers that when they do the interview. I'm really good friends with I'm good friends with several people on that show who talk about the Ancient Aliens theories. But they're still friends of mine. It's okay to disagree and become friends. Now, those two, of course, do not get along currently. And they really get under each other's skin. And it's kind of funny because this guy referenced my last appearance on Greenwald. And I would agree with Greenwald, and I'd have a little criticism of Lou in that Greenwald has some points in that, it's fair for him to ask for clarification on questions that aren't clarified.
Sure.
It's completely fair for him to do that. And I think Elizondo has reacted at times, him and or some of his colleagues kind of attacking people on UFO Twitter. And I don't think that's wise. And the reason I laugh is because I preach this: don't let people get under your skin. And then on Greenwald, like for the guy who saw it and anybody else, there was a question that was asked that really got under my skin. And I even got a little embarrassed and apologized because I had a big reaction. So we're all prone to that. It's difficult in social media these days because we've got stars who are coming on and off of social media all the time. Some of them feeling depressed, some of them even contemplating suicide or committing suicide over what goes on social media. So it's hard to put yourself out there on social media, because even if you decide, you know what, I'm going to start writing some blogs about UFOs and I'm going to share them on my Twitter, you're going to get tons of hate. It's sad. It's wrong. It shouldn't happen, but it does. And we all react in different ways. So in that way, I'm empathetic or sympathetic to Lou and him getting really upset about people, attacking him, and a lot of Greenwald's people attack him. And like John and I talked about on the show, John had his camp and I had my camp, and they were attacking each other. And John and I, got in arguments over it and didn't talk for a while. And, we never want to go back to that. We're buddies. We love each other. We've been doing this for decades, so long, and so I'm glad that John and I are now talking and we're buddies again. I never want that to end. And we just agree to disagree sometimes.
So what you're saying is that you think that this should all be settled with a sock of manure.
Yeah.
At 20 paces. It's interesting because
you're good at reading between the lines.
I know you. I know you that well. It's interesting because you see, you see all these people that come out that are progressing the narrative of UFOs. And certainly I can't think of anyone who, left such a crater as Lou Elizondo did, with getting out the material, all the footage and everything, and the work that he did. And then you will have people who it's like, okay, well, he's getting a little too much love, so we're going to find other areas, and we're going to attack him being human.
Right.
Which for me, a lot of those things just seem to me kind of petty in the big picture. And so if you're really going to discount someone, are you going to discount them 100%? Are you going to say, no, just for the purposes of my own argument? And so I kind of feel like, you've been out in the arena longer than I have. I've been kind of, for several years, been able to play in the back field with my films and everything. But I feel at the same time, you look at it, you kind of go, I guess it just comes with the territory. And so to take any of this personal and to look at it as that's a reflection, I feel is you're never going to win that, and you don't want to.
Agree.
I made the joke when you and Martin, when I was there like one or two times ago on Podcast UFO, I made the joke. I said I don't trust anyone that has like a 5 on their podcast score. I look for someone that's got somewhere between a 4.3 and a 4.6, 7. That's the range where it should sit.
Yeah.
Then not everyone is happy, but you're telling truth, because truths are going to have enemies and friends.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
I think that's a really, really great point. We both have met and hung out with Elizondo, and his humanness is, I think, endearing, in a way. Certainly at times, even during those times that John and I were arguing, makes me feel like protective, to be honest, because, when he first came out and got this, and then his kids are being affected and seeing this terrible stuff on social media about him, that's awful. You're like, look at what this guy has done for this field. And people attacking him like this, it's certainly not, I don't think, something he expected, and it's not deserved.
Yeah. I watched Mirage Men for the second or third time recently. I think it's always good to see it every once in a while, just to see how, the other side of this, and how, boy, when you really want to believe something and you're into it, how you can give over so much of yourself, and how you really have to, I always joke, I have one foot in the rabbit hole, in the UFO rabbit hole. I don't want to go full rabbit hole. I think it's a good idea. But yeah. I mean, Paul Benowitz and that whole.
Yeah. And that's what's tough. And, for a lot of people, and I think that's part of what happens too, for a lot of people, that's fine. They've got their day jobs that have nothing to do with this. They can go rabbit hole diving all they want, and they can, have all of these ideas. But for those of us that are really, literally professional ufologists, we have to be more careful. We got to be having a thought towards moving the ball forward, and how that's done. And we all take different ideas on how to do that. John with FOIA, Lou with working with these government agencies. Fortunate for him, he's got a background with those agencies. And for SCU, for example, tackling the science, or with Enigma Labs tackling the data analysis. We all got to focus on that area, but all of us have our mind towards moving that ball forward. And all of us, at times, every different area makes these strides that benefit all of us. So I think people need to be less inclusive or exclusive, and be more inclusive. Appreciate that everyone's heart is in the right place, and they're moving the ball in the right place, except for the charlatans, and and support all of the different research, even if you don't think that's going to be, that's not your cup of tea, and you're not going to pay attention, watch every podcast in that arena. That's fine. But also, you don't have to be adversarial towards them. You can support them and say, go for it. I hope that brings you, I hope the abduction research brings them, and that field towards some discoveries. It's not the arena that I work on or have time to work in, but I wish them the best.
That's where I've really been parking it the last 4 years, is with the experiencers and going to support groups, and these are the frontline people, in my opinion. Again, if we're talking stage one, which is the witness evidence, but a lot of them have their own physical evidence on marks on their bodies, etc. But it's also, I think everyone needs to kind of remember that no one makes money researching UFOs. It doesn't happen unless you're tied in with an organization that is actively going out there and has to pull together funding and grants, etc. Yeah. It's not like a job that you get out of college and you go, oh, I'll go to this firm, right? And so I always say, these are people that have to go through like the same thing that nonprofits go through in order to really get in and advance this. And so you've done both. You've done it where it's been this hobby thing, and then you've done it where you've turned it into this profession. And so, my question is, how has that worked, and has it changed you in any way since you first got interested in this field?
Yeah. When it was grassroots, I was very nice and I loved everyone. But when I work for the corporate world, I'm figuring out how I could take advantage and exploit every other person.
That's good. That's good.
Just kidding.
You're
no.
Okay.
You're like, yeah. No. Okay. We're being silly again. But has it changed me? No. I've been extremely fortunate in that, the last company I worked for was put together by John Rayo, just some guy who decided to spend a lot of money to figure out what's going on with this field. Did we figure out what's going on? No. But I think that we did provide a lot of great information, especially by taking a journalistic perspective. And, we were able to make a lot of inroads with traditional and mainstream science. I've got a website out where at least I've got a partial list of the different, network television or news network or news outlets that work with us. And it's a long list. That's how Elizondo found out about us, is that we were covering this in a credible manner, or how I started to work with Brian Bender out of Politico. So that was, I think that was great. John was at the conference, actually. He's, I'll be forever grateful for him for that. Now I'm working for a company, essentially a tech startup company. And these are tech startup people, kind of from the tech arena. And they are, figure, hey, we need to resolve this mystery. How do we do it? And they're working with, all of the same big players in this field to say, what do you need? And what we've all needed for a long time is a large database where we can put all of our data together and then analyze that, tools to analyze it, and using machine learning and AI to do that analysis. So that's what we're doing. And in that, people can go to enigmalabs.io. That's our website. And we literally just yesterday posted about 3/4 of about 75 or so articles. Well, maybe about half of the what I've been working on, which is getting a lot of great writers, freelance writers in this field, to write kind of Wikipedia style, articles, or I would say on all of the different citing cases, organizations, and groups, to write kind of neutral, comprehensive articles to educate all of these people that are getting involved on the history of this topic. And I think that's really extremely important, so that all of these people coming in can have a place to go to read up. Okay, what has been done and by who? And so they can understand these people, their motivations, what they've gone through, and how many of these people are highly, highly credible, like Dr. Hynek or Dr. Valet, or any of these other characters that have been doing great work over the years. So I'm really excited about that. And to be honest, we've got this blog post called Transparency for the Data, Privacy for the People, because we're very protective over our employees, because people already know who I am. But we don't want the Elizondo or the Bigelow effect to happen. When these people come in and get demonized and attacked, we don't want, so we're protective. And most of them, you won't find out who they are unless, I guess, they decide to, or down the road that happens. But most of our staff are keeping their names anonymous in that, and to protect them from this sort of thing. So, but it's exciting. And I've always said this with SCU when people have complained, because some of our scientists at SCU for over the years have remained anonymous. And some people have said, oh, they should be out. And it's like, well, what would you rather have, their name or their expertise? I would rather have their expertise, because with their expertise, we have chemists, we have, anthropologists, we have geologists, we have a lot more scientists involved, if they can feel secure in that it's not going to affect their careers. And the taboo hasn't gone. So over the years, hopefully we can completely get rid of that taboo, and then people won't feel like they have to remain anonymous to work in this field. But I would rather have the people working in this field than not. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. I think we're making great strides. I hope people go look at the site and see what we're up to. Over the next few months, they're going to see more and more. And I think what we're going to be known for is data analysis and providing tools to researchers, even citizen scientists, even the people listening to podcasts now. You're going to have tools, largely free tools, at your fingertips to do more research than we've ever been able to do before. So I'm really, really excited about it.
Well, just speaking for myself, I can't do all the research that SCU is doing. And so I'm really grateful for them being out there and the work that you're doing with them. I'm kind of like, if I can, chip in and donate, I will.
Sure.
And
we'll
so,
take it.
and we can talk about, we can tell them where they can go for that again. But my feeling is these people are doing this. They're doing, the work out there that we'd like to see be done. I'm not going to particularly ask, who exactly is doing that, because some people, some mad scientists like to work in their lab and not be known, and we have to kind of respect that process, right? As well.
They're not mad.
Yeah. Oh, they're not. They're just.
We're not mad. That's a joke from.
Yes, from Network.
Young Frankenstein, I think is.
Oh, was it Young Frankenstein? I was thinking
the mad scientist was always saying when he was called a mad scientist, I'm not mad.
So what is next for Alejandro as we wrap up here? What do you?
Yeah, what is next? I think people can go to, like I said, enigmalabs.io to see what I'm up to and see the articles that I've put together or had people put together. We've got a lot of freelancers. I don't want to use their names right now just in case. I don't think they would. Yeah, there you go. I don't think you would want to. We've allowed them. They can share their names if they want. So we'll see. I would leave that up to them. but some of the great people in the field, and then some freelance writers maybe you've never heard of who are just excellent researchers and writers. So I think people will really enjoy those articles. Like any article, that's the thing that I found with Open Minds. The more neutral our article was, the more controversial it was, because then both sides are like, that doesn't represent, how real this is. And skeptics are like, that doesn't represent how fake this is. But that's kind of a fun thing, because I think that all of this will generate a lot of conversation back and forth, and we'll see how that goes. So I guess from our perspective, we will try to remain neutral. And I think I have a pretty good thumb on neutrality in this field. So luckily I get to be the determiner for that when it comes to these articles. And I think people agree. So go take a look. And then, of course, at explorescu.org, where the SCU is doing work, explorescu.org. We're doing lots of cool stuff. We've got a lot of studies going on. But one of the really exciting things that we've been doing in the background is networking and introducing people. So, a lot of a big deal was made about some of the people at our conference, like Space Force and some other agencies were at our conference to kind of see what are these scientists up to. And the SCU, you'll have to remember, are people who are scientists, who some of whom have worked on government projects, some of whom who worked on OSAP, people like Eric Davis or Hal Puthoff or other scientists who are part of our organization. So that's why it's a good place for them to go, because these are the people they either would have hired for these projects or have hired for these projects. So they get to come and network and see what we're up to. I think, we're very proud of being able to network people together. And our Nimitz paper has gotten a lot of attention. The Aguadilla case paper has gotten a lot of attention. And we're continuing to write more papers and do more analysis. And in fact, at Enigma Labs, we're working closely with SCU. So we hope to have some joint projects coming out where, we can provide some machine learning and have our computers analyze cases, ingest thousands and thousands of cases, and then analyze them, and then let scientists know, here's the data set of good cases that you want to pay attention to, that we can do some correlations to figure out what's going on. And then that's when the scientists take over and some of the manual work has to start. And, we've got data scientists on our team that are working with SCU. So that's really fun, because now I feel like, in the background, we've already become part of that scientific community that's working on UAP studies. And so we're going to be able to, customize our tools for those researchers so they can make even more discoveries more quickly, and hopefully bigger discoveries in the future. And I really feel that we're going to be able to provide the tools to make some really significant discoveries in the near future.
Briefly, as we wrap up here, what you guys are doing with Enigma Labs is putting together a database. Jacques Vallée's also got a database. I don't know if his database, how readily available that is, but also Enigma
We're working
Labs,
with him.
Okay, that's great.
So
that
that
answers that. Okay, because I was because then everyone's working from the same resources, same hub, basically network, where you can do that. In addition to when the new cases come in, you can look at algorithms and go, well, this kind of fits this and also fits that. What can we learn?
Exactly. And, that's what we've done at the SCU. We've been open and we work with everyone. And, that's what I've brought to Enigma Labs as the head of research and content. Is my number one goal is, let's talk to the people who have been doing this for decades. Let's talk to the Jacques Vallées, the Mark Rodegers, the David Marlers, the Klaas, in Sweden. Let's talk to all of these people, get their input, get their involvement, and work together to, all work in the same direction and work together on all of this. And that's what we're doing. And so it's really exciting. I want to do all of these people proud. I want to provide them with the sort of data and information they want in the manner they need it. And so that's what we're working hard to do.
Great. Well, the one thing that I feel like I would love to see inserted into this, and I feel like you're really, really good at, is because many a time I've come to you and I've said, hey, so I just heard this thing, blah, blah, and you go, yeah, I heard the same thing. So here's the problem with that. And I'm like, okay, that's right. And so the one thing that I always hearken back to is I had a really great teacher who taught us truth is dynamic on many levels. It's never just that one thing. By its existence, there are other things that relates, and other people take it in differently. It's, colors people don't, you've got someone's colorblind and sounds, etc. So we all kind of have to create a little space for that truth being dynamic.
That's a great point. Because I talked about journalists, intelligence, and scientists work with with the data differently. But one key is that data the results are going to be better with pure data. In all of those arenas need to make sure to have a strong commitment to truth and facts, and not a strong commitment to predisposed ideas about the topic. And, the longer that I've been involved, the less I have hard set opinions and ideas about what's going on, because they serve no purpose except for me to get disappointed down the road when I find out I'm wrong, So it's better just to purely follow the data and purely stick to the facts, and then put those together and see what they build. And the story that they build will be the truth, and it'll be, science, I think, is a little better on this, but it'll be, our reality as it is, which is what we're trying to figure out. And we got to have a little bit of faith, and I think we can have that through experience, that whatever the answer, whatever the truths we put together, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be incredible, and we're going to all be enriched by that information, I think.
I agree 100%. And that's a perfect note to leave on. Alejandro, thank you so much. Say hi to Karen, and continued success with, so many things that you're working on, and I know they're benefiting as much as you are. So look forward to seeing you next time in person. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Next week, again, we have John Burrows, who will be here, and I will be hosting with Martin. Martin hopefully will be back 100%. I'm expecting he will. And again, thank you, everyone, for checking out the show, and we will see you next week.